Okay, well, good morning, everyone. And I'd say welcome back from the event, but I guess you've been back a little bit longer than I have. So as I look at who's uh, in the call today, I can see a number of people that were participants at the event and were there and got the chance to experience it. And if you were there and you're on the call, I'd love for you to be able to unmute your lines in just a few minutes and be prepared. I'm saying this now in advance, to share what some of your highlights were. I know there's been a number of calls since we had the event, and there's been this opportunity already, but each call does tend to pick up a slightly different audience. So it is worthwhile being able to share the positives and the ups, the highlights, the lessons, and what have you. But what I do want to focus on, especially once we've done that, we'll just take a few minutes of the call to share some highlights. But what I do want to focus on today is the critical piece that comes with every event, and that is, what do we do next? These events have a purpose. If you look at every network marketing company on the planet, every single one of them has events in their regular schedule of activities. They all have compensation plans. They all have unique products that they share. They all have their own story, their own mission, and their own purpose. But what is one thing that is in common is they all recognize the value of these types of meetings. And there is a reason for that. I want to talk about that today. Not because we're leading into the next one, because right now we're not. We're coming out of the last one. But it's critical that we understand, what was I really supposed to experience there, and what am I doing as a result? So let's start with having some sharing, and perhaps we can have a few of you unmute your lines, and whoever chooses to go first, please, by all means, go first.
I'd be happy to go first, Ben.
Excellent. Thanks, Bob.
I think what was very palpable at this event was the new energy because of the new leadership. And the fact that Luis was very active, took a very active part in the presentations. He covered what we could do, what we should do with social media. And something that came abroad in Mike's presentation was, it's not what you do, it's what you duplicate. And after his presentation, as I was walking through the crowd, I could hear that statement being repeated several times. So the message was getting through.
Yeah.
I think it was, the energy in October was incredible, but this was a different type of energy.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of the leaders out of corporate.
Yeah.
Made the difference.
No, thank you. And I think you're absolutely right. And it was great to have those two events combined, wasn't it? Because starting out with Luis on stage and sharing so much vision, and also providing immediately the tools that they provided, the new videos and the new artwork and what have you, the new promotional tools that we can use to share our business, like the Kenko Ground and the Waterfall, and to introduce new products, showed immediately that they've been busy from the moment he stepped into the office, which I think, was something that everyone was so excited to see and feel and experience. And you're right, as a result of that, it created a new energy, because it creates a kind of feed forward kind of approach, doesn't it? They get that energy from the office and it feeds into the field, and then hopefully from there through into our business activities and into the results that we get. So yeah, really good point.
Also noticing the Latin American energy.
Yeah. And
the demographics of the age group of the Latin Americans, and how we need to be focusing more on that age group ourselves. There are a lot of us with gray hair that were there.
Yeah.
And I think we need to maybe look at other demographics than maybe what we've been doing.
Well, let me touch on that for just a second. I'm going to agree and I'm going to disagree for just a second. There is a different demographic in Latin America, which is unique to that market. And we do have a slightly older demographic in the North American market. But what we need to make sure we don't do is compare apples for apples. I think what is really important is everyone, regardless of the age that we're at, will attract people like ourselves. Yeah. I'm in my 40s. I tend to attract people around my age group. Yeah. Largely because that's my circle of influence. Yeah. And if I was in my 60s, I would attract people in my 60s. And the message that we have, I think, is valid whether I'm in my 60s or in my 40s or in my 30s or in my 70s. And how we target our product as well will vary according to the age group that we're reaching. I think as we look at our nutritionals, and I'll give you an example of comparing as well. You know, if you look at Latin America, their number one product that they sell are the water products. Now that makes sense if you're in a country like Mexico, because their tap water, for example, is nothing like the tap water that you might get from Colorado or somewhere, you know, or even in the UK. Yeah, tap water over here is largely pretty good, depending on where you're going. But the number one product range in North America are the nutritionals. So you look at the products that were introduced in San Diego, the Bone Health Pack, fantastic resource for an older demographic. But at the same time, depending on how we position it and how we market the product, it can also appeal to a younger audience as well. Yeah, it really comes down to how we market the product. What I would recommend is if I'm older, I look at my network and my contact list and I market the product according to that age group. And if I'm younger, I go out and I market the product according to that age group. It works with both, doesn't it? You know, you can sell a sleep system, for example, or a water system to a younger person or an older person. But how you do it, the words that you use, the language that we use will vary according to the age group that we reach. And it should do, because it's a different message. So I'm going off a little bit on a tangent here, Barb. And I hope you forgive me for doing that. But I think this is important to stress, because I want to make sure that we address a critical point. And that is that anyone that is, and I can include myself in this because I've got a few gray hairs coming in on the side here myself. Anyone that does fit into that category of being a little bit older, we shouldn't compare ourselves to the Latin Americans who are younger and have a different energy, because that's also cultural as well. They'll go in there and, you know, they will dance and shout and have all sorts of a different vibe altogether, because that's just their way of doing it. I'm quite a conservative Brit. Yeah. So when Luis Kasuga suggested that we were going to have a costume themed under the sea party on the Saturday night, my first reaction was, oh yeah, no, that's great. You know, I panicked because I don't like to get dressed up. Whereas those from Latin America, traditionally, typically, and you know, of course, if you're Connie Livingston, who was the most colorful of all, then absolutely you're going to want to get in there. There's cultural nuance in the mix as well, isn't there? But let's not shortchange our contribution based on our age, because I think it's really important to stress. If we're older, we've got more wisdom, we've got more experience, we've got different insights, we've got a different pool of people to reach out to, and all of that is rich and rewarding and positive and good. If we try to reach a different group, we might end up missing something. Yeah. What we want to do is have both. We've got a very important place here where these stakeholders of our business in the field exist, and we want to reach out to them, through them, to people of a like mind and of a like age, and offer as much good as we can. Look for people that want to have the chance for more security in retirement, a second means of income that can have products that will provide enhancements to some of the ailments that they might be experiencing. And for those that have contacts with a younger audience, we reach out to them as well, not instead. We reach out to them as well and offer them solutions for their particular stage of living.
Cody's call on the new product addressed the older generation as well as the athletes, and our new BDZ being applicable to both, and how applicable it is. I had no idea it addressed so many properties.
Yeah.
It's excellent, excellent reference.
Yeah, that's a great example, Bob. So we've got products that can be used for sport enhancement, and for athletic improvement, for strengthening things, and for, I was going to say prevent then, but of course we don't use that language, but you know what I mean, to inhibit, to slow down, to restrict, perhaps, using a bunch of other words. The opportunity there for deterioration to occur, and to provide strength and harmony and synergy at a healthier, stronger, more robust stage of living. And for those later on, we can sort that out too. What a great mix. To me, that's a powerhouse combination, isn't it? That we can benefit both with our product range. And with our opportunity.
Hey, Ben, it's Paul Gabios here.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
We'll speak to you, and then we'll go to Madeline.
Okay.
Yeah. Go for it, Paul.
Is it me? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I've been to many NECAN events. There isn't much that anybody's going to say that I haven't heard before. I don't go to these events for information, but rather the energy from people that you can only get by being with people. Often, you're working alone with your own organization, and you do, upline and crossline support calls on the phone or on the internet, but there's really nothing like being with people that are like-minded in the same room. And that all of the events, these kinds of events, are meant to not recharge, but to increase people's batteries. And I came away with, of course, I had brought this guide dog puppy that I am training, and so she was a big focus for me to make sure she was behaving properly, which she did very well, and everybody liked her. But one thing I came away with, and I come away with as I mature in NECAN, is for things to change in your own life, you have to change, or I have to change in many facets of change, but nothing changes if I don't change fundamentally. So that's what I came away with.
Oh, I love that. And you're right. It's the same for me as well. As I go to these events, the biggest takeaway that I always enjoy is the fellowship with other distributors. I always go there. I always come away with a new phrase, like Barb said before. It's not what you do, it's what you duplicate. And you make a note of that. That's a power phrase. That you need to remember that. But of course, it's what we do with that statement that makes a difference, right? But the critical thing for me, I think, for all of these events, is the spirit of camaraderie and of fellowship and of belonging and of identity that we all start to enjoy at a deeper level. I have to say, one of the points as the event host that was ironically one of the biggest stresses in preparation, but turned out to be one of the greatest rewards of the event, was the picnic at the end. There was a number of things that we weren't 100% in control of with that. The weather, for example. Now, it's San Diego, but it had been forecast for cloudy weather and for a little bit of rain, which made me very nervous. How we were going to get everyone from the hotel to the beach made me a little bit apprehensive as well. Would we get everyone out of the room on time? Would we get all to the beach on time? Would we be able to cater adequately for everyone's kind of food preferences and that kind of thing? I think we almost got there on that point. But it just seemed to be a utopian finish. We had this Kenko grounding video that was introduced on day one, and we kind of finished the event with people taking their shoes off and putting their feet in the grass at the beach, and the sunset was it was postcard perfect. It was kind of orange and red and bright and beautiful, and the weather was just idyllic. And I don't know who it was, but I think there was someone that was clearly a yoga instructor that decided to take a yoga class amongst the group. And I think there's about 20 or so people from the event that started doing yoga on the beach, and it was just tremendous. It just kind of encapsulated, this is what NECAN's all about. It's getting back to nature, and it's being together with friends, and it's putting our health first, and it's putting family and friends first, and it was just a wonderful kind of conclusion to a great event where there was just a lot of bonding that took place. which was really good. I know, let me see, we've got a comment here from Connie, who said the fun and fellowship, 2 critical points that came out there. Definitely a lot of fun. If you haven't seen the pictures of Connie Livingston from the party, it's worth searching Facebook for. She was the most exciting looking lobster that I have seen ever in my life, from head to foot. It was a lobster through and through. Absolutely great. And yeah, synergy, Michelle saying synergy between the 3 markets was profound. High levels of energy, fantastic event. It was. I think each of the 3 markets, I think, were well represented on stage as well, which was nice, as well as off stage in the fellowshipping too.
Ben?
Yeah,
Ben,
Dennis.
This is Dennis. Yeah, one of the things that I took away from that was when Dave Rolfe was talking about making silver today versus making silver, when it was 20,000 in 1 month. And he said, back then people had 30 people in their personal group to make silver. And now they're doing it with, 3 to 6 people. And they're not earning the income that they did before. But if they had the same number of people, they'd be earning more. And I know when Ruth and I started, it was 40,000 over 2 months to make silver. And we typically had 90 people in our group to make silver. That's kind of what we thought we needed.
Yeah.
And, and that people's incomes were up. So, instead making silver with 3 to 6 people and then thinking you've arrived and have, desired, made that destination already and then sit back and retire. I mean, we need a lot more people in our groups.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I think the adjustment for silver, getting an easier bar to cross, is really addressing a psychological trend that is prevalent in the world today, which is a growing sense of impatience. Yeah. And as a result of that impatience that people experience now, and it's my interpretation only, but I put that down to the influence of technology, making life so convenient. It also makes us a little impatient too. But as a result of that, that feeds into our entrepreneurial activities. And so people expect a certain result or an achievement quicker. But the reality is, it's not a quick process to get meaningful results out of any meaningful business. So I think you're right. We can get the same, probably better results, like you said, in terms of income, if we had the same number of people doing the same amount of activity, which is critical. So as we talk about that, I want each of you to think, what does my activity look like right now in my business? I want to ask a couple of questions, and then perhaps we can come back to a little bit more sharing later on. I'll put this back into mute all, and then we'll unmute as we go, and perhaps there might be some others that want to share some of their experiences too. But I want to ask a question. If you were to look at your check and look at the outcome of your existing check, there is a paradigm shift that many of us fail to make, and that is that we're used to working full time and getting a check at the end of the month or at the end of a fortnight, perhaps, depending on where you work, where you live. But let's say it's the end of the month, and that month's check or deposit into our account represents a month's work, which means when we get our weekend check, we look at that and say that's the result of a month's work. Now, let's say that I'm fairly new in the business, or I'm at the silver rank, or I'm being paid as a silver. As an example, just keeping on the trend that Dennis referenced, does the check that you get represent 40 hours a week for 4 to 5 weeks out of a month? How many people did you speak to in order to acquire a new customer? When you spoke to that customer, for how long did you speak before they placed the order? So what we need to look at it at is in a slightly different perspective. If I get my retail profit or my rebates or my overrides coming through in my bank account, how much time does that reflect in business building activity? And I emphasize business building activity because some of us, and I want to be, I've mentioned this before, I love having people on these calls They're here to support. But if this is your only activity for the week, then it's not business building activity. If it's supporting your business building activity, if we're bringing guests on, if we're doing 3 ways as well, if I'm reaching out and I'm contacting people and I'm setting appointments and I'm doing presentations, I'm signing people up and I'm on these calls, then it's worthwhile activity. But if this is all I'm doing, then it might not be the best thing, yeah? And you might go, well, that's not a good reflection then of my income, is it? So what we need to do is say, how many people did I speak to this past week? I want to ask you these questions. How many new people did I speak to last week? How many follow-ups did I conduct over this past week? How many presentations did I give over this past week? How many new people by way of customers have I signed up over the past month? How many new people have I signed up by way of business partners over the last month? Now, we know some of these things, some results take time to measure, yeah? Sometimes it is a relationship building process to acquire a customer or to acquire a new business partner. What time have I put in to that relationship building process for my key prospects, for new customers and new business partners? What have I done to nurture these relationships over the past week or over the past month? These are fundamental questions to ask, because it's often a reflection of these activities that is measured in our checks. And it's good to look then, not just in the context of a month, but in the context of these activities. How am I doing? Does it reflect appropriately, healthfully, and so on? And there is always room, of course, to improve in that regard. So, Madeline, let's pull you on as well. I know you're at the event as well. Let's share what you took away from this event.
I'm glad I lost my turn because I've expanded my thought. And because of what people have said, you've said both and Paul, vision and sight. Paul can't see, but yet one has vision, and that was used on one of the calls this past week since we left there. You've mentioned 3 markets and cultural diversity, and Barb mentioned age diversity. So we have all of this diversity, but what I really came away with from this meeting was the purpose-driven, like-minded group of people, whether it's both and diversity, whatever, with a sense of a common vision, mission, and purpose. That there was more unification from corporate and field, and from field leaders to have recognized Dennis and Ruth and Dave Rolfe, very different style, but these old, I don't mean old, tenured icons having more what I would call inter-rater reliability, collaborative modeling at field level in conjunction with corporate. That is what I came away with, and that I feel that when you have a dip, as this company has, to get back on course, there needs to be, like John Kennedy in Getting to the Moon, if you have to have a vision, even though there's the both and the and diversity, and even though we need sales and we need to have accountability and we need to have the law of attraction and whatever, we still need to have that leadership direction and vision and purpose. And that's what I felt and experienced. And I think more than anything else that I came away with from this event.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad, I think it's important that we recognize the diversity and we appreciate it for what that represents. You can't have an organization as robust as Niken is without having diversity in its mix. And it's great to recognize that, like you said, with age, with culture, with gender, with everything, that was in the room. It was represented, I think, very well. I can see Barb Bertucci up here as well. Do you want to unmute Barbara and maybe share a thought as well?
It was an amazing event, and I declared, which intentionality is a big thing, that it was going to be pivotal for me, you know, that there was some big things happening there and that I was going to have some great takeaways. And so for me, it's wonderful to have all these wonderful things come out of it and the knowledge, but what is your takeaway? What are you bringing home with you? And so I know one of the big ones that I just started was actually recording how many calls I made, how many contacts, you know, and it ends up with a sale or something, or just connecting with people. But I started doing that recently, and I printed out my whole group. You know, I just printed it, and I'm looking at people that I haven't seen in a while and such. And so I'm calling 5 of those at least a week, because I was going to say 5 a day, but sometimes I clear all the stuff that's gone on with Nikan and whatever.
Yeah.
And connect and find out about it. So, but I feel like, you know, that's who we are. We're the representation of Nikan in the field. And so, and these are people I've connected with over the years. And, you know, I'm a Crest, you're either Crest or Colgate, you know, I just say that. But I'm a Crest girl. So people are Nikan people. Do you know what I mean? They love the things, they love it. And it doesn't matter how much time has spanned. They'll go look for their thing, or they'll tell you something about what they've done and their family and such. And so it's been really amazing. I got one of those, I found one of those week at a glance little calendars that come in. And so I'm writing down those, because there is going to be some follow-up with this and sending out, you know, things. And then I'm looking at, well, what invitations, you know, because Madeline, you have a great evening event, and then Randy Rolfe has a daytime one, you know, like, where am I going to tap them in, because they're across the country. So that's my next thing, is where am I playing, and where am I going to put myself, like, I always just say where the rubber meets the road, where you are out there participating and playing and actually doing. And that's great. And I do want to underline the synergy. When Louis Kasuga said, you know, who's the heart of Nikan and yada, yada, and all this stuff about the heart of Nikan. And then all of a sudden it was like, it's all of you, you know, it's like, oh my gosh. Cause you know, it was all the accolades and that you're kind of thinking and you're looking, it's like, well, not me. I know I'm, you know, whatever. And whatever you're thinking in your mind. And then it was like, and then I was like, God, you know, it would be nice to get an award. Like, you know, all the things that go through your mind at the time, the chatter. And then all of a sudden it's like, I did get a pin. We all got a pin, you know, it's just so great. You know? The little things that make the difference, you know, and are the heart. And that is what it's about. And yes, there's a business to it. And yes, there's numbers to it. I called Igor after. I said, okay, Igor, this is what I want to do. Find somebody in your group that knows the numbers. And then it's like, okay, now I can back it out. Now I can figure it out. This is where I am. And because I'm doing the next wave. For me, I'm doing the next evolution of income. I mean, I turned 60 this past year. It was December, so it shouldn't really count till this year. This past year. And things are shifting. And what I want to say is I'm become very intentional with my speaking, and I'm very selfish with my time. And I bring that as an underline because it's really something that is it's become a priority for me. Like, what is it that I really stand for? What is it that I play in? And so I went way longer than I thought, but those things are tremendous takeaways, you know, the ahas with Dave Rolfe and that. But I brought home the 5 calls that amping it up. I'm creating another, my check, I want it to be 25,000. And so I'm doing the 10 to 15 like that. And I make great money. I just want to do the next wave of people and things and have them make the money as well. Like that.
Oh, that's wonderful, Barbara. I'm glad I called on you to share those remarks. It's it makes it a great conclusion for the call. Now, one of the ahas that I had was every time I speak, and with every webinar that I host as well, I will always finish with the call to action. It's what I've been taught to do, and I guess that's what we've all been taught to do, is there's got to be a call to action at the end to invite people to act upon what we've talked about throughout the course of the day or the event or the meeting or what have you. But I learned at the event that those that made big decisions at events such as that made them independently. It wasn't the result of a call to action on stage that someone left the event and went home and changed their lives. It's a result of what they felt, what they did independently as a result of what they heard that caused them to go away and say, as of now, this is what I'm doing differently. A little bit like what you just did, Bob. You said, as a result of what Dave spoke about, this is what I'm going to do. You made your own commitment. I'd like each of us to think about that. What personal commitments am I making right now? How strong do they look? How committed am I? I love the value of being specific in these commitments. I like what Barb just said when she explained the specificity of the types of calls that she was making. I'm going to make X number of calls in a week. They're going to be these types of calls. I'm going to have follow-up calls. I'm going to do invitations. I've got a goal to increase my check in increments of $5,000 a month, going up to the target goal. We've got to make these types of goals and be specific about it. But that commitment can only come from us. And ultimately, what is the objective of these types of events? It's to encourage or inspire or to create an environment within each of us that attends where those types of commitments can be made. And those are private, personal things that happen. But people can come away saying, I got moved and I'm going to do something as a result of it. I hope that those of you that are on the call that were at the event got moved to do something, to take action in a way that is meaningful, that will genuinely change your business, and as a result, change your lives. And for those of you that weren't at the event, it's my hope that you saw enough online and that you've heard enough in these types of calls since it's finished that makes you go, I want to do better too. I'm going to do more with my calls. I'm going to speak to more people. I'm going to reach out and get more specific in the details of my business. I'm going to set some goals that really make me stretch and recognize, of course, that as we measure our results, we need to compare the outcome with the hours that we invest in the right activity, not simply in the stuff or in the time we spend thinking about it. It's not in how much we think about it that makes a difference. It's in what we do after we've thought about it that makes the difference. So what I would love, anyone that wants to have those goals shared, if anyone that wants to share their goal with me privately, please do. I will encourage you and support you along the way. If you want to be accountable to someone, let me know, and I will support you in that process, because just like Barbara Bertucci said, it's not about what we get, it's getting as many people along the way earning the good checks as possible. That's what makes it count. That's what makes us win. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for sharing, those of you that shared, and hopefully those of you that weren't here in San Diego or weren't there in San Diego, I've just gotten back. Hopefully you've had some inspiration come as a result of what you've heard as well and what you've seen. And of course, all we can do to be a part of these types of events, I don't think anyone comes away going, I wish I didn't go to that. I've never heard that said. Yeah, it just doesn't get said. What I have heard a lot is, I wish I brought more people with me. Yeah, I've always heard that after a great event. So let's lead on to the next one. Let's get more people in our teams. Let's speak to more people. Let's be more accountable with each other on the specifics, on the things that matter most. And let's measure ourselves against the real business building activity that we are doing in order to get the results. And any help along the way, we reach out and we share and we ask for help as much as possible, because this is a sharing and succeeding environment. So thank you all very much. Great to be back with you again, and we'll speak soon. Love you.